Sorry, I'm just getting
The reading is taken from Exodus chapter 4, verses 1 to 17. Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. "This," said the Lord, "is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." Then the Lord said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous, and it had become as white as snow. "Now put it back into your cloak," he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, "If they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground." Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." But Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "What about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so that you can perform the signs with it." This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Laura. I'm very conscious that we are actually running a bit later than intended, so bear with me as I go through what I intend to say. I'm going to cut some bits out, so if there's a bit of stiltedness, please bear with me. But welcome particularly to those of you watching online, and I'd like to apologise for the lateness of us being able to join you, but also explain that tonight's talk will be a lot shorter than you would normally be expecting because of the other elements that we've had in our service. But you can catch up by watching a film that we watched earlier in the service that you can find on YouTube about a young man called Jonathan Bryan, and you can find that on YouTube, and it's called "I Can Make a Difference," spelt E-Y-E. Anyway, the rest of us here in church, as you came in, you were offered a pair of glasses or a piece of cardboard to put over your own glasses. So now is the time for you to get these out, and for the first just few minutes of my talk, you have the opportunity to experience a visual impairment of one sort or another. And if you've got cling film, then that's significantly blurred vision, then, or you've got a pinhole in a piece of card that you might stick onto your own. So the blurred vision could be something like glaucoma or cataracts, and the pinhole in the piece of card could be a condition such as called retinitis pigmentosa, where you lose your vision over a number of years from the outside in. You lose the peripheral vision, and before losing it completely, we'll be left with a pinhole. I'm going to pray very quickly. Father, I just pray that the words I speak now would be useful, helpful, and from you. Amen. So I'm just going to read you a short bit of an article, which I am going to cut a little bit. But this is from a reporter for the BBC, and he wrote this in 2019. Like many disabled people, I am often approached by Christians who want to pray for me to be healed. While they may be well-intentioned, these encounters often leave me feeling judged as faulty and in need of repair. So I set out to discover what Christianity has to offer disabled people beyond promises of miracle cures. From time to time, and without warning or encouragement, I get approached in the street by Christians who tell me they want to pray for me to get my sight back. Since I became blind as a teenager, this has been a regular yet annoying byproduct of being an independent, disabled person who can walk about on the street. The last time this happened was on the London Underground. The train was packed full of people, all studiously ignoring each other, when a man put his hand on my shoulder and asked if he could pray for my sight to be restored. But more of that later. I had always assumed everyone knew these encounters as a fact of life for people with who were visibly disabled. But then one day, I told some colleagues about my latest brush with a would-be healer. They were variously fascinated or outraged that anyone would have the cheek to impose their beliefs on me about something so personal. Okay, you can take your glasses off now. I wonder how you found that. A tiny snapshot of what it might be like to have an impairment of some kind. Everything about how you operate for those few minutes has been tipped upside down, and you would most likely, I imagine, feel a bit disorientated and unable to manage the situation as you usually would. I emphasize usually. My job this evening is to open to you the world of disability theology. We're literally just going to scratch the surface because we only have a few minutes. But my aim is not to give answers, which I don't think I have, but rather to get you thinking and hopefully challenge some of our assumptions about God and disability. I am not an expert in this, so what I'm sharing is some of what I've learnt from disability theologians, and my aim is not to give you definitive answers, but to get you thinking and maybe hopefully challenge some of what you have thought up to this point. As Christians, we operate from a place of compassion in most of what we do, being underpinned by our belief that all people are made in the image of God. If we are all made in the image of God, what does God look like? Does God have a body? Is his body perfect? And how do we view disabled people in light of the Bible? Do we have a tendency to think, possibly not completely consciously, but in our subconscious, but of them as lacking or incomplete, shaped by our reading of Jesus healing the sick and commanding his disciples to do the same? And I completely advocate people praying for people, and I do believe that we should keep praying for people, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But do we believe that in their resurrected bodies, that one day everything will be made okay? And so by that school of thought, are we reinforcing the belief that in a person's current state of ability or inability, they are somehow incomplete? Interesting. But for most people with a disability, Their disability is entwined with how they view themselves. A theologian who also happens to be disabled, Dr. Naylor Davis, writes, "I am neither defined by my body and abilities, but I also know I'm not separated from them." She recognizes that her disability is a large part of who she is and what has shaped her through her life. As mentioned, we're all aware that the Bible is full of stories of Jesus meeting disabled people and fixing them. And this can be problematic for disabled people, people who've been prayed for and not healed. But it's also important to understand the context of Jesus' healing miracles. Of course, Jesus was operating at a time when being disabled meant being poor, unemployed, and crucially excluded from mainstream society. There was obviously no welfare state, so you would have been begging on the side of the road, and your life conditions would have been pretty miserable. So whilst disabled people today might bristle at that description of pity that Jesus feels for the people he heals, pity in the context of the time we're talking about is a lot about exclusion and the destitution that came with it. Additionally, I believe that at the time, disabled people were banned from worshipping at the temple under religious law, as they were deemed unclean. So when Jesus healed a physical illness, it importantly also restored a person's place in society. A disabled Christian who writes about this says, Jesus did heal physical illness a lot, and I think some of that was because it did restore people's social dignity at the time. So if Jesus met me today, empowered as I am with a job and my guide dog, would he still think I needed healing? She's skeptical and continues, if Jesus was walking the streets now, I don't know he would be healing in the same way. I don't think Jesus would look at me and think, there is someone who needs pity. Does this mean that we shouldn't pray for people to be healed? Absolutely not. We should keep praying for people to be healed because we never know what God's plan is or what his timing is. But first, of course, we should ask their permission. This is the... we'll leave that bit. So somehow we need to recognize that embracing a person fully is to embrace who they are completely and with their disability. How do we do that in light of the Bible? Well, in our Bible passage, we see Moses doubting his ability to communicate with Pharaoh due to his speech impediment. Verse 10 says, Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." And the Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say." But Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. Well, of course it did. God was frustrated with Moses. He'd just shown him his power. He'd reassured him that he is the God of miracles, and he told him that he would help him speak, and still Moses doesn't want to go. Moses is kicking back, and his inabilities to speak has meant that he's lost his confidence. But God doesn't solve the problem by healing his speech impediment. And Moses confirms that he's still having trouble with his speech in verse 10, but instead God offers a solution that Moses is happy with, his brother to help. But God still stuck to his original plan to use Moses with and despite his speech problems. It was not a barrier to God, to him choosing to use him. So we've discussed how some parts of the Bible might have a negative impact on how people with disabilities might view themselves. And there are other parts that reinforce that disability is no barrier to God. But let's jump back to that initial question about being made in the image of God. And in Luke 24, we see the verses that tell us where Jesus appeared to the disciples after his resurrection. Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." And they were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." In this passage, we see the disciples encountering the risen Christ. The noticeable thing is that our risen Christ still carries the wounds of the resurrection. So does a perfect body really need to be one with no damage, no afflictions, and no wounds? Would these scars have impaired him physically? We don't know. But we see not perfection, but scars, incorporated in the life and the body of Jesus, the divine. Being made perfect, then, does not mean a body is without blemishes. Disability, therefore, does not contradict human wholeness. Instead, it becomes a new model of wholeness. This is a whole model of being made in the image of God, just as we are. Even the resurrection bears scars. And this disrupts the idea of the perfect body being one that has no limitations, no damage, and no wounds. Jesus himself is the most powerful symbol of the disabled body in the Christian story. Glance back to our experiment today. You felt inadequate, operating with new limitations. And if I'd asked you to do some tasks, that would have come to light more, I'm sure. But remember, those limitations were completely a new experience to you. But for someone who is completely adjusted to that way of working, it is there every day, whether that be a visual impairment, a hearing impairment, a physical impairment, getting up these steps. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it is somebody's norm. And most crucially, it's completely embedded into who they are. This might be a good point in the story just to nip back to the story that I read at the beginning, what happened to the man on the tube. Normally, when people offer me to pray for me to be healed, I say no. But this man told me, this man on the underground told me that he was a recovering drug addict and alcoholic who himself had been healed by prayer. I got the sense that he really needed me to let him pray over me, so I said yes, and I let him lay hands upon me. I can't claim to be cured of my blindness as a result of his prayer, but I'll never forget how happy and grateful he appeared to be. To me, it felt very much like the roles had been unintentionally been reversed, and that it was the disabled man during the encounter who had given out a dose of healing. The man left the train after giving me a very big manly hug. I felt quite good too, and smiled, wondering what the other people in the carriage had made of it as I plugged my headphones back in. So, the big question is, how do we respond? If I look at a disabled person and I know in my core, that they are made in the image of God, then I have every impetus to create a world in which they can be celebrated in every way, exactly as they are. And to do that, we need to remove as many barriers as possible, which we as an accessibility team are beginning to do. We don't have a step outside the front door anymore, and so on. You know, things take time, but things are progressing within our parish. But also, a lot of things that we can do are good for everybody. As a teacher of the visually impaired in one of my previous lives, we had a saying that what was good for a child with a visual impairment is good for every child. Clearer fonts, removing clutter from worksheets is good for everybody. Making buildings more accessible is good for everybody. considering noise levels and echoes in a meeting room. It's good for Kath, good for everybody. This is much more important than giving it lip service tonight, which is why we have our team in this parish. But it's more about it's much more than removing the barriers. It's about changing our subconscious attitudes of disability, meaning incomplete or lacking. We can't say, in all honesty, that you are made in the image of God and then exclude people with disabilities from our groups or our rotas. People with disabilities undoubtedly bring lots to the table of church and make the world a richer place. Our challenge is for us to see a person with a disability as being able to serve us and enrich our lives rather than the other way around. Because if we view them as complete, we will. I think we're going to sing again, is that right? Thank you.